Welcome back everyone to Advanced RC Adventures. We've got another exciting episode here for you for the Kyosho Mantis 2-wheel drive Nitro GP. This is a channel where we investigate, explore, build and explain, upgrade and advance Nitro RCs to another level. Come start another adventure with me. As you can see in front of you, we have all the makings of a Kyosho Mantis. We're gonna put sub-assemblies together and rebuild this Mantis here in this video, have some fun time lapses, break in and talk about a few specifics or a few tips along the way. Sit back and enjoy. Okay, so let's break in here and take a look at the fuel tank. It's all cleaned up inside and out. Everything works properly. Silicone caps are still on, and that's going to get sandwiched right in between there as we continue putting it together. Alright, so now we're going to break in here. We're going to go back to the transmission. We're kind of doing this rebuild in a bit of reverse order. Reason we're going to open up the transmission again is to just make sure we have sufficient amount of grease on the gears and bushings, and then we'll be able to do that final assembly. So let's get to it. So for sure this is an old school method, but it's tried and true, and I think there's a lot of misconceptions out there about what to do, how to do, and you can't simply just use any piece of paper. So some of the manufacturers made their manual page thickness the thickness they wanted for their gear mesh. This is a standard piece of notebook paper that I've used a number of times. Let's go ahead and measure this thickness. We're at 0.09, 0.1 millimeter, and so what I like to do is I double that up, and we're just about 0.2, somewhere between 1.5 to 3 is generally a good kind of thickness. Most of the paper that I try to use is around 2 or 0.2 millimeter. And that seems to give a good mesh between these Mod 1 spur gears. So this piece of paper, like I said, I just have it folded together. I have it cut at, I don't know, it's about a ½ inch. So roughly around 13 millimeter. You can make it whatever length you need. I don't measure it, but it's about 32 mil. So that's like 1¼ inch. And it's just enough so that you can fit that in between the spur and the clutch bell. And then you're going to smash it together. Make sure your engine mount bolts are just loose enough to move the engine back and forth. Fit this piece of paper down inside. It'll be a little difficult to show here on camera, but we'll do our best here. Fit this down inside. And then I use the spur gear to kind of pull that piece of paper in. And I'll try to get a picture there. Get it on camera. Okay, so that's down inside of there now. So the next thing is, and it depends on which chassis, which car you have, how much clearance you have, how much room. But the idea is you're not going to be pushing on the engine. You want that engine to be perpendicular to the chassis and parallel to that spur gear, but you're going to wiggle it, make sure it's free, and you're actually going to reach in and push on the mesh of that clutch bell, and you're going to turn it over. Wiggle the engine a little bit. You're trying to push on it as hard as you can with your finger, and then you come down here and you tighten up your bolts on the bottom of your chassis. Go in your torque pattern. This just has 3, so there's not much of a torque pattern. Then what you do is you flip it back over and you take your spur and you rotate it and you get that piece of paper out. And then the next thing to do is you're going to feel your mesh. One thing to do is stop your clutch bell and rotate or rock, I should say, your spur, and you should feel just a small amount of movement. This particular chassis is not going to let me show you. Well, maybe I can. Let me take off this servo real quick. Okay, so now that we have the servo out of the way, alright, let's do the best we can here to take a look at the mesh itself. When I hold the clutch bell and I rock the spur gear, You can see a small amount of movement. You don't want to be so tight that you can feel resistance in it bind. You don't want it to be too loose that that's going to destroy a gear. So, and then what you're looking for is for that mesh between the clutch bell and the spur, you just have an ever so light amount of gap. This is, generally speaking, using this rule, around 0.2 millimeter thick combination piece of paper, and you sandwich it together. It gives you a great mesh for these Mod 1 spur gears. So let's go ahead and put the rest together and button it up. Another thing I wanted to mention was, once you have your engine mount bolts in, it's ready to Loctite them as long as your mesh here is good. So the best way to do that is do a normal torque as tight as you normally would for the final installation. And then once that's done, then you're going to go back around and take out one screw. You're going to put some blue Loctite on, and then put that one screw back in and tighten it to its final. Then, following the torque pattern, you're going to take one screw at a time, take out another one, put Loctite on it, put it back in, tighten it up until you're done. That way the engine itself doesn't move around and it doesn't mess with your brand new good mesh. Then you just want to make sure you rotate that spur gear and make sure that your mesh is still good and that the engine didn't move. Normally it won't move if you do it in that type of sequence and that type of pattern after you take one by one out and tighten them up. So outside of taking care of electronics, servos, receiver, which we'll go ahead and put back onto this side. We'll put in our new battery pack that we talked about in the previous video. More than likely I'm going to use that new style 6-volt custom UK pack for this stock version of the Mantis. We're going to slap on some wheels there at the very end. Normally the wheels are the last thing that I put on. That way they don't get in your way of other installation pieces. Put a new glow plug in and give it a start. We will, in a future video, we will show the upgraded Mantis started up and driven around. And simple things like new air filter, put on the stock exhaust deflector right there on the end, and she'll be set to go. So this has been a really fun journey and a really fun adventure from day one, starting up and realizing and wanting to make a channel and dedicate it to vintage 10 scale touring cars. What can you find that might be more interesting than a mid to late 90s Kyosho that's two-wheel drive and so unique like this? You get to see that Kyosho blue. So please feel free to share, like, and subscribe. And if you like 10 scale, if you like Nitro touring cars, then this is the place to be. So thanks for taking the adventure with me.